cancers are dependent on methionine. So we now use this in the scientific and medical community as an approach to helping treat cancers, which is...
Geoff Palmer is a natural bodybuilding and physique champion
whose groundbreaking lifestyle and research have revolutionized our understanding of healthy living.
It's good in nature, but it's not good because humans eat it.
He demonstrates the adaptations needed to achieve a longer, healthier life.
Look, I'm 61 years of age. If you're an athlete, you need to consume the nutrients that your body is actually using.
Is there special supplements you always would like to recommend?
For the average person, yes. It is so powerful at controlling how much sugar gets into the bloodstream that doctors are actually now prescribing it as the #1 top diabetic drug out there.
For the viewers, this video is in English. Our host, Christian, translates Geoff Palmer's statements into German to provide access to this incredible information for German-speaking viewers as well. Enjoy the video. There is an edited section. You can find the full video with all of Geoff's statements by clicking on the link in the description.
Hallihallo und herzlich willkommen im Higher Health Podcast. Heute mit einer Clean Machine Episode, denn wir haben The Clean Machine hier, den amerikanischen Vegan Bodybuilder. Und zwar ist dieser Mann seit über oder knapp 40 Jahren vegan. Er ist ein ethischer Veganer. Er sagte mir im Vorgespräch, dass jedes Jahr 2 bis 3 Trillionen Fische getötet werden. Das ist eine unglaubliche Zahl. Und dieser Mann beweist seit über 4 Jahrzehnten, dass auch Veganer gesund leben können. Er ist 61 Jahre. Er hat einen Bizeps wie Arnold Schwarzenegger zu seinen besten Zeiten und zeigt research-basierend natürlich auf, wie eine vegane Ernährung gesund und langfristig auch funktionieren kann. Dieses Interview ist in Englisch, aber ich werde die wichtigsten Stellen direkt im Interview übersetzen. Also freut euch auf diese spannungsgeladene, muskelgeladene und science-based geladene Episode mit Geoff Palmer. Welcome, my dear, and how are you today? How good are you? And how much protein did you consume today already?
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for all you're doing for the movement and globally with your reach. I've been a big fan in the United States for quite a while of vegan athletes. Yeah, I start out my morning breakfast with a smoothie, usually of lots of berries and bananas and fruit to get the high polyphenol content up, and then of course some good vegan protein. So I've already had 30 to 40 grams of protein this morning.
Very, very good. So there's that standard rule of at least a 30 gram protein per meal, which you described it best. And I see in the background you have your own protein and other supplements there. So before I come to the first question, I just translate. Hatte sein Frühstück also heute schon mit einem leckeren Smoothie. Er hat einen Haufen Früchte da drin, um die Polyphenole natürlich eben auch in seinen Körper zu bekommen. Und er hat mindestens schon 30 bis 40 Gramm Protein, also Eiweiß, in seiner Ernährung gehabt, über wahrscheinlich sein Proteinpulver. Da frage ich ihn jetzt gleich, welches Proteinpulver oder welche Proteinzusammensetzung er als sinnvoll erachtet. So man, as I see, you have your own protein powders and so on. So there's a big question around which is the best protein source when it comes to protein powders especially. So do you have a mix between of, I don't know, pea protein, rice protein, soy protein, you name it? Or do you take always the same because of a good ratio or because of a good digestion and so on and so on?
Yeah, so interestingly, I was the protein behind me is called clean green protein, and I was the very first to bring a super green called duckweed to market. Duckweed is the richest source of plant protein of any terrestrial plant that we know of. But I'm actually going to be launching a new source of protein. I'll be the first company in the world to bring this protein to market, and it will be disclosed a little bit later this summer, since we're under wraps on the thing. But it will also be one of the highest protein contents of any food sources. So there's so many different things. Pea protein is one of my favorite, or soy protein, because of its high leucine content, the branched chain amino acid. But pea protein has shown in multiple studies. One recent study showed that it increased muscle protein synthesis more than whey protein, and that it actually reduced inflammatory markers, so faster recovery than whey protein in soccer players, what you call football players in Germany. They actually did studies on that, and they recovered much faster using pea protein than whey protein. I stay away from rice protein. Rice is one of the largest contributing CO2 of all the crops grown. So not good for the environment. I still eat rice occasionally, but I don't want to make a habit out of contributing to rice being grown.
Is it also, that heavy metal arsen? So
Yes.
is it also because of that a little bit?
Yeah, see, most plants will filter through the soil, so they're grown in soil, whereas rice is grown in water, especially in China, where the vast majority of rice protein comes from. They have coal burning plants there, which allow a lot of heavy metals like lead and mercury to get into the air. That rains down, goes into the water, and the rice soaks it right up. Now, it's good in nature that the rice will filter this through and make it, to return it back to its organic standards and diffuse this. So it's good for remediating the pollution, but it's not good because humans eat it and it's full of the lead and mercury. So most of the rice protein that comes out of China wouldn't even pass here in the United States.
So you prefer pea protein, you also like soy protein and so on. So there's a big discussion here around soy protein, especially because of its, phytoestrogen. I don't know if it's the right word in English.
Yes.
And which brings the hormone balance out of scope in the body. And it's also highly processed or ultra processed because it's heated and so on. What do you think about that in a healthy concern?
Yeah, so let's tackle the phytoestrogen thing. So people misinterpret phytoestrogens as being the same as human estrogens or animal estrogens, which is not the case. About 80% of all estrogens humans intake come from dairy. So when you're talking about, isolated proteins, whey protein is one of the most ultra processed proteins there are, especially if you're getting isolated protein or even further. So when in comparison to animal proteins, there's no comparison. Plant proteins, even if they're processed, are far superior. As far as the estrogens are concerned, phytoestrogens actually bind to the estrogen receptor sites and are a very weak signal. So they actually reduce the amount of real estrogen binding to the receptor sites. So you're ending up with a less estrogenic effect. What you're doing is replacing a weak estrogen, strong estrogen with a weak estrogen, and they just simply don't affect the body the same way as real estrogens that are found in meat, eggs, and dairy. Those are real estrogens. Those are up to 100 times more potent than a phytoestrogen. And if you really want to be concerned, the highest phytoestrogen, the strongest phytoestrogen in the world, is found in hops, beer. So if you're actually concerned about drinking soy, then you should stop drinking beer altogether. And I don't think a lot of Germans are going to like hearing that.
No, so you lost now 95% of the listeners here in that podcast. No, just joking around. So I just translate for a few minutes. So, er sagte gerade, dass wir haben über das Protein gesprochen, vor allem Proteinpulver, und eines seiner Favoriten ist das Erbsenprotein, also Pea-Protein. Es erhöht die Muskelproteinsynthese sogar noch mehr wie Whey-Protein. Er persönlich konsumiert kein Reisprotein. Einer der Gründe ist, dass es einen sehr hohen CO2-Ausstoß hat und auch Reis eines der, ja, wie soll ich sagen, stark belasteten Lebensmittel sind, wenn es um Arsen und Quecksilber und andere Schwermetalle geht, denn sie wachsen im Wasser und durch den Regen, der von oben kommt, zusammen mit den Giften, wird es dann quasi sehr stark aufgesaugt von dem Reisprotein. Er ist ein großer Fan auch von Sojaprotein und hat gerade mal so diesen Mythos aufgedeckt, dass eben das schwierig wäre bezüglich der Hormonbalance, stimmt aber nicht. Also er sagte, Whey-Protein ist da viel mehr verarbeitet und hat einen sehr viel schlimmeren Effekt als jetzt die Pflanzenproteine. Und das ist natürlich schon auch sehr spannend. One last question when it comes to protein. A lot of people, and especially also me, in my earlier days, I digested protein powders very well, but recently, since the last 2 or 3 years, not that good anymore. Also, when it comes to fermented protein powders or raw food protein powders, also not. Do you have any clue what is about that? Is it just because it's not natural in a way, because in the nature there is no isolated protein, it always comes with fiber and other plant-based stuff? What's your opinion about that?
Yeah, I think that can be ameliorated somewhat by consuming proteins with whole food plant foods, which contain natural enzymes and stuff. Of course, remember when you're removing the protein or isolating the protein from the plant, most of the enzymes that help us digest those are removed in the process as well. So you can either put the digestive enzymes back into the protein or consume the protein like I do with heavy amounts of high enzymatic foods like fruits and vegetables that can help with the enzymatic breakdown and utilization of the plants. Now, I will be launching the very first whole food protein powder that will be chocolate and vanilla, just like regular protein powder. It drinks like a regular protein powder, except it's in its whole food state with all its fiber, all its enzymes, everything intact. I'll be launching that this summer to address exactly what you're talking about. Because yes, look, I'm 61 years of age, natural bodybuilding and physique champion. I don't keep 17-inch arms by not consuming enough protein. So we definitely do need to, if you're an athlete, you need to consume the nutrients that your body is actually using. Now, there's a lot of discussion about how much protein to consume. That can be a whole nother debate. But it is true that plant proteins do digest a little bit less easily than animal proteins. So they're, vegan folks do need to consume just a little bit more. But as you see in our primate relatives, they eat a lot more protein than humans do. When people say, is there a concern about eating too much protein? What they're talking about is animal protein. And yes, there are major concerns in health, and there's lots of studies to show that you increase your animal intake of protein, you're also increasing your saturated fat, your cholesterol, your heme iron. All of these things have known to contribute to disease causation. Whereas plant proteins contain fiber and polyphenols and antioxidants, all have known to reduce the risk of causation for these diseases. So it's not just the protein, it's what the protein comes with when you eat it in its whole food state. That's where I think there's a misinterpretation, where a lot of people are saying research that eating more protein is bad for you. Well, eating more plant protein is not bad for you. Eating more animal protein is bad for you. And I think we need to make that distinction a little bit more clear.
Yeah, that's a good differentiation. So, sagte gerade, dass wir mehr gefährdet sind, wenn wir viel mehr tierisches Protein essen. Also zu viel tierisches Protein kann wirkliche Schäden im Körper verursachen. Natürlich gilt das in einem gewissen Maße auch aus meiner Sicht für zu viel pflanzliches Protein. Alles zu viel ist zu viel. Allerdings ist es weniger schlimm, wenn man jetzt mehr pflanzliches Protein isst. Ganz im Gegenteil. Und er sagt eben auch, dass er bald sein erstes Proteinpulver rausbringt auf den Markt, was aus kompletten Pflanzen besteht, also nichts Isoliertes oder Konzentriertes. Und wenn man Proteinpulver nicht richtig verträgt, dann sollte man Enzyme mit dazu nehmen. Also bei mir wird es zwar dann noch schlimmer, wenn ich quasi Obst mit Proteinpowder esse, obwohl da in Obst sehr viele Enzyme drin sind, aber das muss jeder für sich selber schauen. Es gibt aber natürlich eben auch Supplements für Enzyme. So I just talked about the enzymes and to digest the protein. Very well, and they are also supplements with enzymes, right? So now we can switch over to the supplements thing. So is there special supplements you always would like to recommend, especially when it comes to fitness athletes, but not only? So, and second questions will be, which supplements do you consume actually?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of supplements that are key because they're lacking in the diet, which would be vitamin D3 and vitamin B12. So definitely some interesting research on vitamin B12 has found that there are certain populations, like in India, where their gut microbiome produces sufficient amounts of B12 and it is absorbed in the upper GI intestinal tract where it can be actually utilized. So they have had lifelong vegans, Jain factors, where they don't eat any animal products at all and have never taken a B12 supplement and do not get pernicious anemia, period. That's interesting in the research. When those people migrated to England during the time where England opened up its doors for transfers, then they started getting B12 deficiency. So it was the change of the diet or the change of exposure to other B12 sources in the environment that changed the microbiome apparently, and then their body stopped producing their own B12. So it does appear that human beings in our natural state in nature most likely would have a healthy microbiome that would produce enough B12 where we wouldn't need to consume it. Now, because of stress levels, modern exposure to things, food grown in unrich soil, we just don't have the B12 in our diet nor in our microbiome at this time. So yes, it's very important, especially for vegans, to supplement with vitamin B12. Iodine, probably the other big one, because iodine is rich in the soil, but because of modern factory farming processes where we're just growing a single crop in the soil over and over and over and again, it depletes all the iodine out of the soil. So much so that iodine was added to the salt during World War II because there was iodine deficiencies in the United States. So definitely be sure to keep your iodine content up. I do take an iodine supplement. Now, the reason why non-vegans don't seem to have a problem with iodine is because they drink dairy. And it's not that iodine is found in the dairy, it's that farmers use iodine on the teats of the cow to prevent infection. So that's just supplemental iodine that they're putting on the breasts of the cow before they milk, which then gets in the milk, and that's where they're getting their iodine from. It's iodine supplemented as well. It's just they're supplementing the cow, and then you're drinking the cow's milk. So that's why non-vegans don't seem to have as much prevalence of iodine deficiency as vegans do. It's definitely something to keep an eye on just because of our modern farming practices.
Okay, so er sagte, dass er auf jeden Fall 3 Supplements er auch selber nimmt und dann eben auch supplementiert werden sollten. Das ist Vitamin D, Vitamin B12 und Jod. Und deshalb, es gibt zwar Völker, indigene Völker, die noch Vitamin B12 auch produzieren können. Also die haben ein entsprechendes Mikrobiom, mit dem sie Vitamin B12 produzieren könnten. Und diese Populations haben auch sehr, sehr lange gelebt, ohne jemals Vitamin B12 supplementiert zu haben, und zwar auch vegan. Sobald die aber zum Beispiel nach England übergesiedelt sind, dann hat sich das geändert. Natürlich eben auch mit dem Lifestyle und dem Umfeld, das sie dann dort vorgefunden haben. Jod ist ein anderes Thema. Jod scheint zwar genug da zu sein, aber es gab dann doch in den Böden einen Mangel, vor allem während dem Zweiten Weltkrieg, und die haben die Böden dann quasi mit Jod versorgt. Und der Grund, warum Nicht-Veganer, also Flexitarier, in der Regel keinen Jodmangel haben, ist deshalb, weil sie Milchprodukte verzehren und die Kühe, also die Brüste der Kühe, die Zitzen, die Euterzitzen, werden mit Jod behandelt, um quasi Krankheiten, Erreger etc. fernzuhalten. Das bedeutet auch, die supplementieren Jod, nur auch da wiederum über die Kuh. Also auch hier interessante Fakten, die er hier nennt. Und sehr, sehr spannend. So I just translated your supplement protocol, so I understand right that you as well also supplement vitamin D, B12 and iodine. And I mean, you have also BCAAs and so on, so amino acids. Is that something special when it comes to bodybuilding and extreme fitness, or would you say because of the modern lifestyle, which focus on carbs, more or less, a lot of other people are as well protein deficient?
Yeah, so the difference between animal proteins in the amino acid profile are two distinct differences. So when you look at a protein, all proteins are different. They have what each of the 9 essential amino acids, 20 amino acids altogether, but each of the 9 essential ones, those are the ones that our body has to get from diet, right? All 9 essential amino acids are actually made by plants. Animals do not and cannot make essential amino acids. It's impossible. So, but each one of the proteins have different levels of each of the 9 essential amino acids. So there's 2 essential amino acids that are important, but should be at certain levels for human beings for optimal health and then for fitness. One, methionine. So we used to think that higher methionine was better because methionine stimulates growth. Now we know actually methionine, lower amounts of methionine is healthier for human beings. Animal proteins have high amounts of methionine in it, one of the essential amino acids. That methionine stimulates growth because animals generally need to grow faster and more often and replenish their cells. Humans are very slow growers. We take 18 years before our brain is fully developed in human beings, where most animals is 6 to 12 months before they're in adult stage. So
it seems it takes even longer. Some research scientists get the proof that our brain is still evolving with, I don't know, 25, 30, maybe always.
It's true. We're very so we're even born almost completely helpless as we come out of the womb and still can't fully function until years later. And even then with the help of the adult humans. But yeah, so methionine, you don't want to tell your cells to grow, because if they do, then they start growing rapidly. That's cancer. And we now know that methionine actually is all cancers are dependent on methionine. So they found that if you can just restrict the amount of methionine in your diet, you can actually wipe out cancer cells, kill cancer cells. So we now use this in the scientific and medical community as an approach to helping treat cancers, which is tell people to go on a plant-based diet because plants are lower in methionine, and it feeds the cancer cells and they start to shrink. So this is a beautiful way. But we now know that also we used to think that calorie restriction lengthens lifespan, right? The less calories you eat, the longer the lifespan. Well, that's really cool. But then they said, well, is it calories really, or is it the protein? And they found out, sure enough, restricting the protein actually extends lifespan. And then they said, well, okay, let's drill down even farther. Is it the protein or is it a specific amino acid? And they found, sure enough, it's that methionine again. If you reduce the amount of methionine, so it's not just the calories, you can get the same amount of life extension, increased lifespan, by just restricting the amount of methionine you eat. And you can do that super simply just by eating plants instead of animals, because animals have a much higher methionine in them. The second amino acid there is leucine. Leucine stimulates the cell to open up and allow amino acids to get in it to allow cells to grow. That's what's bodybuilding. So it's called muscle protein synthesis, or MPS. Muscle protein synthesis is triggered by leucine. And the more leucine you have available, the more muscle protein synthesis, the body creating proteins for us to use to build and make muscle. All right. So plant proteins are generally a little bit lower in leucine. So what we can do is simply just eat a little bit more protein, and then you'll have more leucine. That's one way to do it. But if you want to add more protein, you're going to add more calories, more fiber, more other things that you may or may not want to try to get to that. So there's a different way to do that. Simply just add the branched chain amino acids. There are 3 branched chains. Leucine is one of them. You can just add it back. So amazing studies showed that if you just took the same amount of protein as animal protein, but in plant protein, but just added the branched chains, not adding any more protein, you get a 33% increase in muscle protein synthesis. So this is a way you can just add the branched chain amino acids without having to add a bunch more protein. You can limit your amount of protein intake while still getting the same muscle gains as you would consuming animal products.
Super helpful information. Thank you for that. I just translate. Er sagte bezüglich Aminosäuren, dass es da 2 Aminosäuren gibt, die sehr, sehr wichtig sind, darauf zu achten. Das eine ist Methionin. Und das kommt hauptsächlich viel mehr in tierischen Produkten vor wie in Pflanzenprodukten. Und Methionin ist zum Beispiel eben auch stark verbunden mit Krebs. Das heißt, es hilft auch den Krebszellen zu wachsen, so wie ich das richtig verstanden habe. Und dann sollten wir eben das nicht so krass bevorzugen, sondern eher Lysin bevorzugen, denn Lysin ist eine Aminosäure, die der Zelle hilft, sich zu öffnen und quasi Protein bzw. Aminosäuren in die Zelle einzuschleusen, und dadurch kommt natürlich auch mehr Muskelwachstum zustande, und zwar in Studien bis zu 30% mehr Proteinsynthese in den Muskeln. Aber wenn wir die BCAAs supplementieren, da ist einer der Aminosäuren, nämlich Lysin, und dadurch können wir die ganzen positiven Effekte, wenn wir zum Beispiel über Kalorienrestriktion sprechen, können wir trotzdem haben, wenn wir Lysin, sprich BCAAs, supplementieren, denn über die BCAAs nehmen wir nicht mehr Kalorien zu uns, wir nehmen aber in Folge mehr Eiweiß über diese Aminosäuren zu uns, und so haben wir eben die Longevity-Effekte von einer kalorienreduzierten Diät mit drin, ohne die negativen Folgeeffekte, und das ist natürlich extrem gut. Und da auch wieder der Hinweis, dass auch Pflanzenproteine weniger Lysin enthalten und deshalb es ein Supplement ist, vor allem für Fitness und Bodybuilder, das elementar ist, vor allem wenn es dann mit BCAA in Verbindung kommt. So that's a very good information about that. So you are more or less a fan of the BCAA and not the EAA, let's say essential amino acids, which you can also supplement, because there in the EAA there is also a huge amount of methionine in. Is that correct?
That is correct. And look, all proteins, all plant proteins contain essential amino acids. You don't need to elevate the levels of methionine, which you would do when you take essential amino acids as a supplement. You would naturally, because it's included, you're elevating your levels of methionine, which decrease longevity and feed cancer cell growth. Neither one of those is the way to go. You just want to increase the leucine, which is the muscle protein synthesis part. But I want to remind people, look, BCAAs are helpful for people who are fasting to help prevent muscle loss, people who are on a calorie-restricted diet to help prevent muscle loss, because the more muscle you can maintain, the more you can maintain your strength, so you stay strong and not weak. But also, it means maintaining more muscle will allow you to burn more calories, so you can keep your weight in check. And with obesity at epidemic proportions in the United States, I think this is very helpful.
Are you a fan or believer about that calorie thing? I mean, it's just a measurement, right? We don't have another measurement right now, but we all know more or less, like guys like you, that this measurement is not a correct measurement for the body of humans. So it's just like you know you it's better than nothing. Let's say it like that. But you as a plant-based expert since around 40 years, do you count calories?
No, I don't. And look, you're absolutely right. This whole idea that a calorie is a calorie is a calorie is just totally false. Calories can be processed in wildly different ways in the human body, depending on your health, depending on your body's needs, depending on your microbiome, depending on your metabolism, how well your thyroid gland is working. There are so many, your age group. There's a really amazing study that showed glycemic index, which is how much your blood sugar goes up when you consume a certain food. Well, it was based on the food itself, not on how our microbiome metabolizes that specific food. So we now know, like in fruits, there are polyphenols in the fruit that actually affect our microbiome, and our microbiome breaks down those polyphenols and creates other metabolites. And those metabolites affect the way that sugar is utilized. So between the fiber metabolites like short chain fatty acids like butyrate and propionate, these all change the makeup. So the fiber, the polyphenols, there's an amazing polyphenol in apples. It's in the skin of the apple. It's called floridzin. It is so powerful at controlling how much sugar gets into the bloodstream that doctors are actually now prescribing a synthetic apple skin, floridzin, as the number one top diabetic drug out there besides metformin. So here we are, have something as simple as an apple skin that is controlling the sugar that's in the apple. So when people say, oh, that apple has so much sugar in it, well, that sugar isn't metabolized the same way as the same amount of table sugar. You put table sugar in your mouth, 100% of that sugar is going to get into your bloodstream. You eat that apple, because of the polyphenols and the fiber, that is slowly getting in there and has a very different impact on your blood glucose. So a calorie is not just a calorie. A calorie is important in how it's processed. What comes with that calorie? Is there fiber with it? Is it in its whole food state? Are there enzymes there? How does it affect the microbiome? There's so many different things in there. But for the average person, yes, in order to lose some weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit. Now, here's a really cool study. They said, all right, let's take people and find out their maintenance level dosage of calories, right? Let's say it's 2,400 calories per day. Now, they got them both eating what's called isocaloric. That means both groups of people had the exact same amount of calories, same amount of protein, same amount of carbs, same amount of fats in both groups. But one was whole food plant-based. Remember, same exact 2,400 calories, same protein, same carbs, same fats. And the whole food protein people lost weight and the other people did not. It's not the calories, it's what those calories come with and how they're processed in the human body.
Very good explained. Thank you so much, Geoff. Just translate. Er sagte gerade, weil meine Frage war, ob er an Kalorien glaubt und selber Kalorien zählt. Er sagte, er zählt keine Kalorien. Er sagt auch, dass die Kalorientheorie, die wir jetzt aktuell haben, eben überhaupt gar nicht auf den Menschen übertragbar ist. Denn es kommt eben auch darauf an, wie wir essen und in welcher... Also ob wir zum Beispiel ganze Lebensmittel essen, die eben die Ballaststoffe mitbringen, die Polyphenole mitbringen, all die anderen Sachen mitbringen. Er hat den Apfel genannt. Im Apfel ist wohl ein Enzym drin, das jetzt in Amerika eben auch das Number One, die Nummer 1 Medikamente neben Metformin ist, um Diabetes zu bekämpfen. Da nehmen quasi die Ärzte dieses synthetisch hergestellte Enzym dann und bekämpfen damit Diabetes. Super spannend, weil es nämlich bestimmt, wie viel des Zuckers tatsächlich dann quasi in den Blutkreislauf und sprich damit dann in die Zellen kommt. Also die Natur ist wohl extrem schlau und er hat auch zum Schluss noch eine Studie genannt, wo sie den Erhaltungslevel an Kalorien gemessen haben an den Leuten. Und sie haben den Menschen in 2 Gruppen geteilt und die eine hat eine komplett vegane Ernährung bekommen und die andere hat eine normale Ernährung bekommen. Aber alle haben dieselbe Anzahl an Kohlenhydraten, dieselbe Anzahl an Fetten, dieselbe Anzahl an Proteinen bekommen. Und die vegane Gruppe hat abgenommen, die andere nicht. Super spannend, auch hier diese Studie. Wir werden versuchen, alle Studien zu verlinken, solange er sie uns zur Verfügung stellt. So, we had a previous talk before we just started that record, and you told us, or you told me a lot about omega-3 and fatty acids, which is the third macronutrition we know. So we talked about the protein, we talked about a little bit about the carbs, which is, I think, also in your opinion, the less important macronutrition as soon as you take it with whole foods, like you in your smoothie with bananas, with apple, with all the fiber and so on. So you are not a big fan of rice, which you mentioned already. So I guess you don't eat that ultra processed carbs. But when it comes to fatty acids, especially omega-3, what's the latest, hottest research you are in, especially when it comes to having a athletic body sculpture and big hulls?
Yeah, and thank you for that, because humans are globally killing 2 to 3 trillion fish every single year. And it's a really horrific approach. Fish breathe in water with dissolved oxygen, a little bit of dissolved oxygen. Humans breathe in air with a little bit of dissolved water in the air. There's water vapor in the air. So we get a little bit of water, a lot of oxygen. They get a little bit of oxygen, a lot of water. So what happens when you force a human to breathe in water? We call it waterboarding. It is the most severe form of torture we know for human beings. That's exactly what you're doing to a fish every time you pull a fish out of the water. You are subjecting it to way too high amounts of oxygen, just like you would be forcing water into our lungs, which causes our lungs to be on fire. Imagine doing that to 2 to 3 trillion animals every year, basically the equivalent of waterboarding them until they die, torturing them and making them suffer excruciating pain until their death. That's what we're doing every single year and calling it fish the health food. Okay, so where did we get this idea that you need fish to get omega-3s? Fish don't make omega-3s. It's impossible. They eat omega-3s from algae in the water. Okay, so the fish don't even make the omega-3s. So why do we think we need these omega-3s? Well, when I go to teach lectures all across the United States, I ask the question, what are the 2 essential omegas? And everybody raises their hand, oh, EPA and DHA. And that's false. Now, why do 99% of the people believe the 2 essential omegas are EPA and DHA when those are not even essential? Our body makes our own EPA and DHA. The 2 essential omegas are ALA, omega-3, which is made by plants, and LA, omega-6, which is also made by plants. Animals do not and cannot make them. That's why they're called essential fatty acids, because it's essential that all animals, including humans, get them from our diet. Now, the vast majority of our omega-3s that humans eat, 70 to 80% of the omega-3s we intake, are ALA from plants. It's because we're eating plants like grains and greens and beans and stuff like this all the time. So if we're getting almost all of our omega-3s from plants, our bodies then convert it down to EPA and DHA. So where did this idea come from that we need to get DHA from an animal source when we don't? Well, the fish oil industry came up with a test called the omega-3 index, which is a blood test. You draw blood from your arm and you measure how much DHA is in your bloodstream. We've been using that for about 50 years as an indicator of how much DHA your body is converting. Now, humans convert ALA to EPA in the bloodstream because EPA is very good for protecting our cardiovascular system, our heart, our bloodstream, our endothelial in the blood. This is great. We need lots of EPA for our blood. We don't want DHA in our blood, though. Now, this is interesting because the blood studies show high amounts of DHA when you take fish oil. You're putting DHA into the bloodstream. Well, what happens? DHA increases LDL cholesterol in the blood, increases your risk for atrial fibrillation. That's your body having an irregular heartbeat. Now, once you get AFib, you have a 63% increased risk for dying of cardiovascular disease, of heart attack. So taking DHA can increase your cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, increase your risk for AFib, and increase your risk from dying from heart attacks. It's like, well, we shouldn't be taking this. Well, the body does not convert ALA, the plant source, into DHA in the blood for that reason. Instead, it takes ALA and takes it all the way down to the liver and other tissues and converts it safely there to prevent the damage and the negative effects that DHA has in the bloodstream. This is an indicator that human beings are meant to get all of their essential omegas from plants and not animals, because all animals contain pre-formed DHA in them. Fish do, cows do, chickens do, eggs do, milk does. These are pre-formed omegas. Human beings are better off not putting any DHA into their bloodstream. We now know that based on the research. The research now shows, the study just came out in this year in 2024, that 47 times more ALA is converted to DHA outside of the bloodstream than in the blood. 47 times. That makes these omega-3 blood tests useless and worthless for human beings, especially if you're vegan, because it's going to show and it's going to scare vegans thinking, oh, I don't have enough DHA because it's not measuring in my blood. Well, it's not supposed to be in your blood. If it is in your blood, it's running a risk of you having heart attacks or stroke or AFib. You do not want that. But unfortunately, the fish oil industry has gotten so good at scaring people, even vegan doctors are telling people to take algae DHA, which is a preformed DHA, which mimics the preformed DHA that is in animal products. We're scared into thinking the exact same thing that we used to think is right, that animal products are better, when we now know animal products are worse because you're introducing preformed DHA into the blood where human beings do not want it. It's an
Yeah,
amazing reversal of what everything we thought we know about omega nutrition, and it's about to blow up. I'm writing a book on this whole subject with over 100 citations of studies showing the evidence overwhelmingly that humans are better off with omega-3 from plants than they are from DHA in fish and animal products.
yeah, that's really controversial information because there are a lot of very known experts out there worldwide which are talking about the other thing, like you just mentioned. So I will translate it in a short sentence. So jetzt kommt eine sehr, sehr spannende Information über Omega-3, die wir hauptsächlich im Mitgliederbereich haben, denn wir werden sonst wieder sehr, sehr viel Hate und vielleicht sogar eine Blockierung riskieren, denn das ist was anderes, wie ganz viele der anderen Experten sagen. Er sagt also, dass wir Omega-3, dass wir falsch informiert sind über Omega-3, vor allem über DHA, also über DHA, dass wir das gar nicht im Blutkreislauf haben wollen, da es mit einer erhöhten Herz-Kreislauf-Erkrankung und sogar Todesfällen korreliert ist. Er schreibt gerade ein Buch mit über 100 Verweisen auf sehr, sehr viele Studien und so weiter, dass wir hier besser dran sind, die Fette aus dem pflanzlichen Protein oder beziehungsweise Pflanzen zu konsumieren, statt über tierische Proteine, denn das wissen wir ja mittlerweile, dass die zu erhöhten Todesfällen eben auch führen. Deshalb, dadurch, dass dieser Content sehr explizit ist, werden wir nur in dem Mitgliederbereich veröffentlichen. Trag dich dort hier einfach unter diesem Link ein und dort siehst du dann natürlich auch die volle Version. So we're looking forward about your new book and all the research you done. Is there any pre-information which user can see right now, like some selected studies, or do you have a blog article about that? Any more information where people can come to you?
Yes. So if you go to YouTube and you can see my videos where I do a deep dive into the science. I always post right on the screen the title of the study and the link to the study so that people can look them up and read this research for themselves. I want people to see this information to say that it's not just me making up stuff or talking about stuff or making assumptions. This is all really backed by published human research. And it's not just one study. I've read close to 10,000 studies on omega nutrition over the last 20 years to come through this. Because look, I'm in my 40th year of being vegan. I'm in the best shape of my life at 61. You don't need to take a testosterone pill, do you? No, because we make our own. We make our own from cholesterol. We make our own cholesterol. So our body endogenously inside makes all the stuff it needs. It just needs the substrate, the original essential omega-3 ALA from plants. And let the body determine how much, where it's produced. Look, we have different ages, we have different genders, we have different ethnicities, all produce different amounts of those different omega-3s. Let our body decide what it needs, when it needs it, where it needs it, and for whom it needs it. By taking DHA, you are saying, oh, body, you don't know anything. I'm going to just dump this amount in there. And it's wrecking the whole system. That's why I'm trying to get this out to as many vegans as possible, because vegans are taking algae DHA thinking that they're doing the right thing when they could be actually harming themselves. A great study on vegan men, actually. They said, all right, well,
How
we
many study
know.
you know, man?
Yeah, vegan men. This was actually a study on vegan men compared to omnivore men, because they were saying, hey, wait a minute, fish oil improves endothelial function. That's our blood vessels, right? So they're like, okay, well, if fish oil does that and vegan men don't take any fish oil, well, then their blood vessels must be worse, right? That was the assumption of the study, and they set out to prove that. Well, the vegan men actually had superior blood vessels, even though they were taking less than half the amount of DHA. Now, why is that? Well, if DHA is increasing LDL cholesterol when you introduce it, you're actually making more arterial stiffness. That's the plaquing of the arteries. That's the amount of LDL cholesterol that gets stuck inside the arteries. And when that happens, the artery becomes stiff. In vegans, they're flexible. They expanded and contracted. You need that to happen for healthy function. So less DHA was actually better in the vegan men than taking DHA from fish oil in the omnivore men. Again, it was what they were comparing to. Compared to unhealthy people, yes, the omega-3s did help with the inflammation a little bit. But when you compared it to vegan, no, the vegans were much better off in function.
So, du hast jetzt ganz viel gehört über Omega-3, wahrscheinlich das meiste nicht gesehen jetzt, denn es ist im geschützten Bereich, das ist wirklich eine ganz, ganz krasse Erkenntnis, gestützt auf Hunderten, wenn nicht sogar Tausenden neueren Studien, keinen alten Studien. Also schau da auf jeden Fall rein. Dieser Geoff Palmer ist ja wirklich ein Study-Freak. Ich glaube, das versteht er jetzt auch. Und er hat hier natürlich seine eigene Appearance ins Feld geworfen. 61 Jahre in der Best Shape of his life, zusammen mit studienbasierten Material. Das ist schon ziemlich impressiv und dementsprechend, ja, vielleicht siehst du das dir mal an. Ich habe auf jeden Fall diesem Mann zu danken. Er hat hier ganz, ganz viel Neues auch für mich als Veganer reingebracht. So, thank you so much for your help and efforts here. I mean, you are around 40 years plant-based. This is how it's my chronological age in total. So, thank you so much for your whole experience and yeah, you have a biceps which is third time as big as mine, but yeah, you're just amazing, amazing guy. So I just would like to recommend all listeners here to get over to cleanmachineonline.com. He has his own products, his apparel, his merch, and of course, there's a whole learning platform as well as the YouTube interviews where he explained everything in detail and interviews a lot of other people in the plant-based niche. So thank you so much again for for all of your work. And if you have some last words to the listeners, let's go.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all you are doing. If anybody, if there's practitioners out there listening, I know some of the omega-3 information is controversial. If you have any questions, I'm happy to share all of the research that I have accumulated over the last 20 years. I'll be doing lectures throughout the country, and of course, be launching a book, hopefully by the end of the year, which will lay out all of the information and really change the dialogue. When I became vegan 40 years ago, my father was an English professor at the university. My mother was a psychologist. So all the questions came. Not only where do you get your protein, but where do you get your omega-3s? So I knew in my heart of hearts I was right. I knew this had to be right. But back in 1985, when I became vegan, there wasn't this amount of research available. Now there is starting to, and it's painting quite a different story. Something that I knew intuitively in my heart, I knew was right nutritionally, environmentally, and definitely for the animals, I knew was right. Now we have the science to back it up. And I'm hoping the science is going to make this irrefutable to the point where no more questions should be asked. It's better for your health, it's better for the planet, and it's obviously better for the animals. Thank you again for having me on.
Arigato and namaste. And I say my English wording: stay healthy, stay vegan, eat your broccoli. That's it. And thank you for having you, man. All the best. Bis bald. Bis bald. Tschüss, tschüss.